Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. And today we have with us again Eric Fritzke, who is a broker associate and principal at the Trinity team at Keller Williams Preferred Realty. Eric, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Mike. Thank you, sir.
Hey, it's great to have you back. I know we love talking about the Denver metro real estate market and just all the nuances. So bring us up to speed on what you've been seeing. I know that at the time of this recording, we're mid-2021. And so, you can pretty much put a pin in, pretty much things change weekly. So, middle of 2021, what are you seeing in the commercial real estate market?
Yeah, that's kind of a broad spectrum question, and it's interesting. We are seeing somewhat of a dichotomy in the commercial market in that there are sectors of the market that are doing rather well, like industrial, for instance, and other sectors that either are struggling or there's still some unknowns there, like office, for some probably obvious reasons. There are still companies out there that haven't brought people back into the office full-time or in some cases even part-time yet. So, I think there are many companies out there that are evaluating and asking themselves, how much do we want to bring people back? How much do we want them to allow to still operate from home? Or some, hybrid model of the two of those.
Yeah.
And I'm still hearing stories really on both ends of the spectrum, right? You've got companies that say, we want to bring people back as much as we can, with the kind of thought or idea that we can still allow some people to work from home. Obviously, there were a number of people working from home already going into the pandemic that were able to be managed and productive and those types of things. And I think certainly there are companies that are finding that they can continue to operate that way. And other companies that are saying, we need people back to be able to collaborate and, have some oversight and that sort of thing. So it's, like I said, office is kind of somewhat of a conundrum at the moment.
It makes me think of something because I, as you were saying the word dichotomy, I love that word because it's like on one hand, there's this, on the other hand, there's that. So industrial doing well. Okay, good. Office is struggling. And as you were saying that, I was making a mental note. Well, it's probably because of COVID and work. And you're like, yep, that's what it is. A thought came to my mind. I know that there's dozens and dozens and dozens of examples on both sides of the equation. Like you said, we must get back to working in person, and then we will never come back to working in person. In fact, if I remember correctly, Yahoo has made the announcement months ago. In fact, probably over a year ago. We're never going back to working in person. We love virtual. We get work done, and that's what we're going to go to. And then a friend of mine at church works for Excel Energy, and he said that we're going back once a week, if that. So it's just kind of like, all across the board. But here's my idea / question. What if a company has kind of still in that conundrum of should we go back full time? Should we do a hybrid? And what if part of their questioning process is, what do we do with our facility? Well, maybe there could be, and I'm kind of putting my business hat on, and maybe we can mastermind this here and kind of maybe this could be an idea. But maybe you do a conversion into taking your space and convert it into like co-working spaces, and then they can, lease it out to people wanting to come in and use a space for a day, a week, a month, and bring in a whole bunch of people in a variety of industries. That way their people still have their bullpen of, cubicles or office spaces, but now it opens it up. But have you heard of or could possibilities like that be a help for companies that still have office spaces?
Yeah, I think that, at least in my mind, causes more potential issues in management than it creates a solution.
Okay, good point.
Most companies want to focus on their business and not the business of
Running a
managing
business
tenants and leasing space, because it's really completely two different things.
Yeah.
I think more the narrative is, for companies that are finding themselves wanting to give up space, they're starting with having that conversation with their landlord to say, how can we restructure our agreement to reduce our space, maybe relocate within the building, maybe a buyout of some type for a period of time. It's for certain companies, it might make sense to pay 6 months or, potentially even a year's worth of lease term just to get out altogether. So, I think that's more the narrative than, how do we solve it by a co-working type of scenario.
Yeah, I mean, and it's kind of like if we were in a room with a whole bunch of, owners, business owners, property owners, we could go, okay, let's put that idea up on the sticky note. What's another one? What's another one? What's another one? And then go back to them and go, okay, well, this one here, that's a great idea, but, this would create, okay, good. So now let's look at the next one. So, there's all kinds of things that you need to do to be creative. What would you say are some other things? Let's kind of dive into that dichotomy. So we've got industrial doing well. So let's think about any of your industrial clients. If that sector is doing well, what are you seeing or able to provide people that are either currently in industrial commercial properties that they might want to expand? And what would you say to someone that might be looking to get into commercial real estate, regarding the industrial space?
Well, I would say the good news on that side is that they are continuing to build new space. So in addition to, the demand for industrial space, not only are those companies, increasing, potentially new companies coming in, any vacant properties, but also with the new product coming on the market, that also gives, opportunities for companies to move out of existing space, those types of things. So that's all a little bit of a, manage, how do we manage our space as well as, what it costs, right? Because newer space is typically going to cost a fair amount more, somewhere probably, easily 20 to 30%, in some cases more of what maybe their existing space is, in a building that's 10 or 15 or 20 plus years old. So we're able to help really just, we can do some side-by-side lease comparisons to show them what that looks like, just to really provide that information so that they can make a good business decision.
Yeah, and I think that there's a couple of things that what you said there made me think of ideas like, what if you want to in the word expand, your portfolio, your commercial portfolio. You could, renovate a property that you currently have. You could rent it out and move on. You could sell it and buy a different, bigger one. Within the commercial space, are those some of the options? Because many times that's the first thing you think about in residential. You can fix and flip, you can rent, you can sell your property and buy a different one.
Yeah, and it really depends too if you're talking about leasing, or I think your question was framed more around if a company owns their building, right?
Yeah.
So there's really two different approaches there, and it looks different, obviously, if you're a tenant or if you're an owner. So I would say, at least from what I heard specific to your question, if you're a business owner and you occupy the property that you own, and you need to expand, again, it goes back to, do you have the ability to expand because your lot's big enough and, you can go through the correct processes, in order to, add an addition to the building, or do you need to look at selling it and relocating to, a bigger building that maybe fits the need a little bit better?
And when you say correct processes, I want to dive in deeper there, because I know that is a term that you would say, but it makes me kind of flip a big red flag up to go, hold on. When you hear about correct processes in commercial real estate or any type of real estate transaction, that could be a 15, 20, 30 bullet points of you need to make sure this and verify that. So, I'm certain that we don't have time to cover that in a 2 or 3 hour conversation, but talk a little bit about working with the right commercial realtor like the Trinity team with correct processes, whether it's regulations or zoning, just the knowledge you guys have to help people navigate through that.
Yeah. So, again, depending on the context of the situation, one of the, key pieces is that governmental authority approval, whether it be for, maybe a specific use, because, zoning dictates uses, right? So specific to, and it really applies to any commercial property, but since we're kind of on the industrial vein, you can't move a cement manufacturing company into a light industrial building, for instance. That's going to have to be a heavier industrial type of zoning. So that's one thing that we look at and kind of help guide our clients through, who do they contact? How do they get, some preliminary idea that they can have that approval as we go through the process of looking at relocating. And then, there's a number of other things that come into play once we get into the contract process with environmental surveys and inspections and property surveys, those types of things. So there's definitely a number of things that we have to consider to really help, again, our client navigate through the process.
And I think, many things jump to mind, but when you said specific use, it reminded me of a phrase, and I'm sure it's not a real estate related phrase, but one of my clients works in an industry that intended use is a thing. And so depending on what you're looking to do, like, oh, well, you can't do that, but considering intended use, now we can. That gives us the opportunity. So I wonder if you can think of a way that there's been a project you've worked on where it seemed to be a roadblock, but because something like specific use came in, you're like, ooh, but that gives us the freedom to accomplish it this way. And all knowing, like, for instance, that, many people might not have known to do it this way, but because you've seen that before, you've had a project before, and now we know to go to whatever zoning or county or whatever regulatory, and now build out the case with specific use, that opened up that opportunity. Is that a thing?
It certainly can be. Really what it boils down to is when you look at zoning code within the certain city or county, there are permitted uses, which basically say if your use is pretty cut and dried, like a veterinary use in, a certain location, and the zoning allows for that. Then there are uses with review, which most cities and counties have gone to, regardless of whether it's a permitted use. They still want to have some oversight to say, okay, we want to understand what your use is, what any potential ancillary business services or uses are, and give you the approval to do those things. And then there are just not permitted uses, as I mentioned before. You can't move a cement factory into a light industrial building. So there can be some kind of wiggle room, right? There can be some negotiation that happens with that governmental authority in some of those approvals, but there are, so there's some gray areas there. But there's also some, pretty cut and dry black and white areas too.
And I guess it comes down to just knowing from experience. And I'm certain that if someone takes a real estate license test and gets to hang their shingle, they're not going to have the depth of knowledge that you guys have from experience in projects and specific knowledge that way. So one thing that comes to mind is when clients come to the Trinity team for commercial needs, is there a recurring thread or a thought that you can think of that they typically have struggled with in the past with previous projects that you guys are able to say, oh, I see where you're coming from. We do it this way and we solve things like this. What are some of the comments that they, are saying, it sure is refreshing working with a commercial real estate firm who does this. It's a wonderful change. What are you hearing?
Mm-hmm. I think what comes to mind is really a lot of agents, and really this is across the board, even with our residential and management divisions as well, take the approach to, have a conversation with a client and say, okay, what are your needs? And then, the conversation kind of ends there, and then they go out to try and solve what that client, told them as far as their criteria. We really like to take a little more time to dive in a little bit deeper and have more of a conversation with that client to really understand, what is it they're looking to accomplish? What are some specific nuances with the business that, we need to understand? And to your point, some of those nuances take that experience and background that we have to really understand how to approach some of those things. And then, through a series of questions and listening and diving a little bit deeper, we want to make sure that we're on the same page with the client, have a good understanding of what their direction is before we try and go out and, solve what it is that they're looking to accomplish.
And, that kind of makes me think of your name of Trinity team. And I'm sure that a lot of organizations would say, oh yeah, we are the, XYZ team, which in reality is just a bunch of individuals working up underneath that name. But you guys truly take that team approach to the next level. Mm-hmm. So talk a little bit about that as opposed to, like when one person needs help and they go to their colleague down the hall per se, and they're going to give them a little bit of help, but they're going to hold back because really that's could affect my clientele. Mm-hmm. That's not the way that it is in your organization. So talk a little bit about that and what benefit that brings to the client.
Yeah, so it is pretty cool, the dynamic that we have within the team for multiple reasons. Coming in with the fact that we do commercial and residential and property management, and even, a number of different aspects within property management as well. So, for instance, if even within our own divisions, right, we've got myself and my partner Gordon. We've got two other commercial brokers that have a number of years of experience. And then our executive admin, Hope, who has, a number of years experience in the industry and with the team. So just for a commercial client right there, we have, over 70 years of experience and background to be able to take that team approach. We meet on a weekly basis as a commercial division and talk each deal. We kind of mastermind around, any issues that we're having or potential options that we might have for clients. And then sometimes it goes outside of that that specific division, like commercial division, might overflow into our commercial property management, for instance, where we can, reach out to Brett as a resource to answer questions about CAM reconciliations or triple net expenses. The viewpoint that he has and the approach that Brett has with his experience in managing commercial properties can be valuable for a client as well. Again, depending on where they're coming from, whether they're an investor or maybe they are an owner user, but they don't want to manage their own property. We've had those scenarios as well. So.
I love when I hear that, because it gives me, when you hear, well, we don't just answer the client's issue, we ask questions and we take the consultative approach to give them a full answer, holistic approach. And same as what you're talking about here, I would suspect that even though you have a residential division, there's some nuance of the residential market that will benefit the commercial clients, because it's just, the team brings that whole, the sum of the parts is greater than the whole concept, and that mastermind. And it kind of reminds me of like the TV shows about, on the medical where, something happens. So let's have this, M&M, I forget what it stands for, morbidity and mortality. But what happened? What actually happened, and how can we prevent it again? Well, I'm envisioning you guys sitting around a room, a table going, okay, well, who's working on something that we need help with? And like, oh, well, I've got this one project where, and someone pipes up and goes, oh, I've had that before where we fixed it with. And I think that the bigger the experience and the broader and the deeper the experience, that just kind of, I'm sure people are just scurrying to take notes and go, yes, I can fix it with that.
Sure. Yeah.
And then the breadth, too, of having commercial and residential, as well as property management, all of those kinds of things, all in the same umbrella, just really brings it all together. So let's wrap this up, Eric. What's the best way that someone, whether their need is commercial or residential or property management, but what's the best way they can reach out to the Trinity team and connect with you guys and ask some questions and learn more?
Sure. So we have our website address at Trinity Team Real Estate CO for Colorado.com. And then we have a number of telephone lines that lead to different divisions of the team. My specific line is 303-539-7661. But I think our general team line is 303-539-5468. So again, either the website or any one of those numbers. And actually, our general Keller Williams preferred office line is 303-452-3300, and ask for Trinity team.
Excellent. Well, Eric, thanks so much for coming on today. It was great catching up with you and learning about the Denver Metro commercial real estate market.
My pleasure. Thank you, Mike.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.